Alright folks, this week I'm talking about my experience of trying to apply for PIP, the Personal Independence Payment. So I was working as a support worker for people with various disabilities, mental health problems, learning disabilities, autistic spectrum conditions, things like that. Got a psychology degree before that, so through having a psychology degree and working as a support worker with people with autism, I kind of had an understanding of what autism was. But more so, my mind was on the fact that I was struggling physically with the job. Um, so in 2013, I was diagnosed with Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome, and then by 2014, I was struggling so much with it that I was actually sent by my employer to an occupational health thingy, and the occupational health people deemed me unfit to carry on working in that role. So I lost my job as a support worker, obviously couldn't go and do anything like that again. What was I going to do with my life? So I went on to ESA, the Employment Support Allowance, and that wasn't easy by any means, but compared to applying for the PIP, as this is just an absolute nightmare. This is the second time that I've tried to apply for PIP. I did try to apply before I applied for ESA in the first place, and it was really weird. Like, I was using a walking stick at the time because I was getting so much pain and frequent partial joint dislocations in my legs. So I was using a walking stick a lot at the time, and there was no way I'd be able to walk, even around the block, let alone to the local shop, without the walking stick. I'm telling them all about this, and then when the letter comes back, they wrote in their letter that we have decided, or I have decided, that you can walk more than 200 yards unaided. Like, okay, right, as if like I'm not struggling with any physical difficulty that's preventing me from moving my legs enough to walk around. No, I was just waiting for your permission to use my legs. We have decided that you can. Well, I can't. I mean, I couldn't at the time. Like, my health does sort of fluctuate. I have a few months where everyone tells me that I'm looking really well. Everything still hurts, but people will tell me that I'm looking well, and then I'll have a few months where everyone tells me that I look like shit. So it's up and down really, but they are supposed to, as far as I can ascertain, legally they're supposed to assess your capacity to do things as if you were actually doing them. They've got to assess you as if you were actually doing it. So if they assess your ability to prepare food, they've got to assess you as if you were actually preparing some food, which obviously they don't do. I think also they're supposed to test your capacity to do these things like repeatedly, safely, like in a reasonable amount of time and to a reasonable standard compared to other people. And with a lot of these things, it's like I do have ups and downs. So I don't have good and bad days. I have bad and worse days in terms of the chronic pain. And in terms of like subluxations and not being able to do things. So really weird that they don't acknowledge that, they'll just test once, can you lift your arm up? Like, well, yeah, like I can lift my arm up now, but for me, like that's like, it's all a balancing act, it's a risk. I know that if I raise my arm now, just in the interest of performing a little horse dance for you, then later on when I need to get my beans out of the cupboard to have something to eat, there's like a very high possibility that my shoulder will have subluxed, and then I'm going to struggle to reach into the cupboard and get what I want to eat. Just because I've done it that once for you, it's like with the spoon theory thing, you only get so many spoons. And so it's like, they pull you into the assessment and you've been conserving your energy, you've been trying to rest up because you know that the day's coming, that you're gonna need some energy to go and have this assessment. So you go there prepared for that, and then it's like, right, use all of your spoons now. Oh well, you're fine then. Like, well no, I'm not fine, am I? Because I've used all of my spoons now in doing this little dance for you. Now when I go home, I'm gonna have all sorts of issues, and that just doesn't seem to come into the equation at all. Madness. In this one, they've said that I don't struggle with preparing food. I said to them that I do struggle with preparing food and that there's no aid or appliance that can help. when I was in hospital for 3 weeks on a pain management rehabilitation program, they gave me all sorts of kitchen aids to try and use, like, you know, like knife handles with like extra padding and electric tin openers. And it's like, well, the knife handle with the extra padding hurts my wrist more than a normal knife, so that doesn't help. And using a normal knife hurts, but this hurts more. And you know, using a tin opener, that kind of hurts, but then if I use an electric tin opener, that's not better, because I can feel the vibration of it, like vibrating through me. That's not going to help either. But then, you know, to them, in their perception, it's like, well, you know, if you don't need an aid or appliance in the kitchen to help you, then you don't need help in the kitchen. Like, no, I do need help with preparing the food, but there's nothing on the market that can help with that. Another section is about managing your medications and treatments, and I've said that, you know, I can't manage my treatment at all. My mum has to make my appointments for me, because there's no way I'm getting up at 8 o'clock, half 8 in the morning. Most days, you know, I can't sleep because of the pain. No way that I'm getting up at 8:30 to make a doctor's appointment. So it's usually my mum that makes the appointment. I forget when the appointment is, so she has to remind me. I, you know, can't really drive that much. You know, I can drive, but it hurts to drive. You know, they're saying that I can manage my medication or treatments, or I don't need to. Well, I've been quite clear that I can't manage my treatment myself. My mum has to remind me. My mum has to take me to appointments. All they're focusing on, though, is the fact that I'm not on any medication. As if the fact that I'm not on any medication must just automatically mean that I'm not ill, I don't have any issues, and I don't need any support. Well, like, there's no medicine for being autistic, because being autistic isn't an illness. It isn't something that needs to be cured. And there's no treatment for Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome, even though it is an illness, I think, because it's untreatable. Like, that, you know, medical science just hasn't, you know, maybe at some point in the future they'll come up with some way to cure Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome. I think that seems pretty unlikely, with it being a genetically inherited condition, but, you know, maybe they'll be able to come up with some kind of treatment at some point in the future to help with Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome. But at the moment, there is no treatment, there is no medicine available. And they're just like, well, you're not on any medication, so you must be fine. It's like, no, it's the opposite. It's like, I'm so not fine that they haven't even got medicine for what I've got. Now, the worst thing about this, I think, the most insulting, is the fact that when I got the letter back, you know, I'd gone to my assessment. I mean, even going to the assessment, that was a nightmare. I'll come on to this in a second, but even going to the assessment, I remember the first time that I applied for PIP, I said, well, you know, there's no way that I can come to the assessment centre because I can't get there. My mum would have to book a day off work, so take me. But they wouldn't, even though it said on the letter that they would do a home visit if you can't get out, they're just like, no, we only do that if you're, you know, absolutely on death's door. No way we're doing that otherwise. But, well, then, so my mum's got to have a day off work just to take me to this thing. Just, I mean, it's beyond me. Like, if I've been diagnosed by a medical specialist in a particular field, then who is this person who isn't a medical specialist in any field to come along and say, no, that's wrong? But you don't get to do that, surely. But anyway, yeah, so, you know, having to actually go to the assessment centre, that was a nightmare. Having to deal with, like, you know, other people's noise in the waiting room, clock ticking loudly. Even when I went into the actual assessment, it was like the girl that assessed me had this really noisy fan on. Had to ask her to turn that off because there was no way I could concentrate through the assessment with that on. But yeah, sorry, the most irritating and insulting thing for me is just the absolute lies that they put in this letter when they wrote back to me. Like, they said, you said that you can manage planning and following journeys, and I agree. But I didn't say that. I spoke at length about how I really struggle with planning and following journeys. Like, there's no way that I'll get the tube without having some friends with me and they're in charge of, you know, the navigation, because I'd just get completely overwhelmed. I'd get lost. I can't even get a bus. You know, the feeling of the bus vibrating through your body, I can't deal with that. That makes me hurt for days. I can't deal with the, you know, the chatter of everyone around you, and I can't separate it out to, you know, if a bus driver says something to me and there's like 30 other people talking on the bus and can't hear what you're saying, it's just a wall of noise. You know, absolute nightmare trying to have a social interaction with a bus driver as well, trying to get any help from them. I can't make head nor tail of the timetable because, you know, like they have like the street name on the timetable of like the bus stops at this street name. And it's like, what am I, like flipping geographer? I don't know the names of all the streets. Like, you should have a picture so I can see what street it is and I'll recognise it from memory from seeing it. Just the name of the street. My job to remember. Am I the town planner now? Not my job to remember all of that. And you know, all the times as well. I can't. You know, why don't they give buses, rather than numbers, call it like, this is the XYZ bus, this is the ABC bus, this is the red bus, this is the blue bus, something like that. Rather than having it's like, you know, this is the 54 bus and it comes at 4:52. How am I supposed to retain that and then like remember, or like, you know, a better example would be like, you know, it comes at 4:34 but it's the 54 bus. Well, I'm going to get that 30 and that 50 confused. You know, so I can't handle that at all. For them to say that I can plan and manage journeys, it's just like, well, how would you possibly know? Like, you were supposed to assess me as if I was doing the task. Well, when my mum gave me a lift to your assessment centre and I sat there answering questions, what part of that was anything like emulating me trying to plan and follow a journey? It's not. You asked me about it, I told you, and you just decided, nah, bullshit, mate. Well, what? Like, that's not how measurement works, is it? When we talk about, like, you know, testing and measurement, that's not really how measurement works, is it? You know, get a tape measure out and just be like, you know, don't even look at the tape measure. Yeah, I think that's probably about a foot. Well, why did you get the tape measure out if you're not even going to look at what the tape measure says? Really, really beggars belief. And you know, so much in here that I didn't even say, and it seemed to me that it's like, well, clearly what's happened here, when this first arrived, I thought, oh, there's been some mistake, this isn't my letter, they've addressed this to me, but actually they've got confused and they've used somebody else's information, because it just seemed like this is not what I said, this doesn't apply to me in the slightest. You're completely just making shit up. And of course it's been on the news that they actually do just copy and paste information from similar reports. So, you know, they might have been doing another report at the same time as they were doing mine, and they've just copied and pasted a load of the kind of standard block information over and just forgot to delete the bits that don't apply to me. And, you know, when you're thinking that in the first place, you feel paranoid. You think like, no, Department of Work and Pensions wouldn't do that. They wouldn't be allowed, surely. There's got to be standards. So you feel like it must be you, like, you know, oh, I must just be being paranoid, I'm just being oversensitive, because that couldn't happen. But then it's on the news that it does happen, they do actually do this. Just, you know, how is that acceptable? You have adequate function in your hands and adequate movement and function in your upper and lower limbs. Again, you know, like I was saying, just because I can do it that once doesn't mean I can keep on doing it. In fact, it's the opposite. The fact that I did do it that once because you forced me to do a little whore's dance for your money, because you forced me to do that, then I'm going to have problems later and I can't get my food out the cupboard. You know, I gesture a little bit while I'm talking to the camera because I feel like I should. I don't really understand what gestures mean. I just see neurotypical people waving their arms about as if it carries some meaning. So, you know, I'll emulate that a little bit for the sake of making an engaging video. But, you know, it's not quite the same, is it, as having adequate function and power in your limbs. And when you're asked, you know, can you lift your arm up? You sort of think like, well, I'm not going to lie, because I could have done, couldn't I? When they said, can you lift your arm up in the air, I could have gone, oh, no, I can't. But I didn't. I lifted my arm up in the air and said, yeah, I can do it now, this once, but, you know, it's 50-50, really. I don't know whether I'm going to get pain and a subluxation as soon as I do it. And if I do, then I'm pretty much up the creek for the rest of the day. And so I do that and I say it, but it's like, no, we're not trying to measure your ability to do things repeatedly. We're just trying to take a little snapshot in this particular moment, as if that can be applied to, you know, generalised to your entire life. Absolute madness. And so obviously this was the letter telling me, I should have mentioned, sorry, this was the letter telling me that they've decided I'm not eligible for any PIP at all. But it does say that you are allowed to appeal. So you have to ring them up and say about a mandatory reconsideration notice, and then you write back to them saying all of the points that you want to contest. And so I rang them up to try and talk about this, and this guy on the phone was talking about, you know, how you go through the process of, you know, contesting the points that you want to contest. And he literally, I don't think I'm exaggerating, my mum was here, so I'll ask her, he spoke to me for about 20 minutes saying the same thing, like the same 4 points that he wanted to make. So he'd make his 4 points, and that'll take, you know, 4 or 5 minutes, and I'd go, right, okay, yeah, fair enough, I think I'm, you know, I think I pretty much got that. And then he'd go through it again. Right, and the whole time, like, I'm trying to say, like, okay, right, and he's just talking over me the whole time, just going round and round and round in the circle of saying the same thing, the same, like, 4 points, but you know, a slightly different variation each time, rather than just giving me a nice, concise, you know, here's the 4 points and here's all the things to consider within those 4 points. He's like changing it slightly every time he went through an iteration of it, adding more to it. And it got to the point where I was like, I was actually shaking at this point, because I was trying to get a word in and tell him, I'm really struggling here, mate, because you're overwhelming me. You know, I hate saying that. It seems like a, you know, a wuss move to, like, complain that things are overwhelming for you. But it was overwhelming for me. I was literally shaking on the phone because I couldn't get a word in to tell him, like, you know, I think I've pretty much got the gist, mate, and you are bombarding me now. And so I stopped him, and, you know, when I could get a word in, I stopped him and said, look, if it's alright with you, I'm going to hand my mum over now and give her permission to talk to you on my behalf, because I am autistic and I'm, you know, I'm struggling. I am feeling a bit overwhelmed now. I am struggling. And so I heard him when he was on the phone to my mum, expressing his, you know, surprise at, like, well, I didn't think he could have been autistic because he sounds very articulate. What? You don't expect to be stereotyped like that when you're talking to the Department of Work and Pensions about your disability benefit claim, you know? It didn't seem to me like you could be autistic because you're very articulate. Right, okay. So it's Chris Packham, is he non-verbal, is he? He presents Springwatch or whatever it is, and he's not articulate. Well, what fresh madness is this that you're talking? But Gary Newman, is Gary Newman not articulate? He writes hit songs but hasn't got a grasp of language, no? What are you people on about? Sort of thing, like, I shouldn't have to educate them about what the aspects of these different conditions and disabilities are. Shouldn't be my job to do that. And people say, like, you know, you've got to talk to them as if they don't know anything. And it's, well, yeah, but, like, where do you draw the line with that? I'm really not sure where I draw the line with that. Because surely there's got to be some things that I can just assume they know. Otherwise, where does it end, you know? Have I got to, if I write them a letter, have I got to then go and explain to them what a pencil and paper is and what the concept of lettering is and how you put that together to read, like, where's the line, you know? Should I come and wipe your asses for you as well? Where do I draw the line when they say you've got to speak to them as if they don't know anything? Like, well, yeah, but that's not really what you mean, is it? So explain what you mean. Exactly how much detail am I supposed to be giving you? So, anyway, you know, I appealed it. Oh, that was another thing in this letter. They're saying that I maintained eye contact with the assessor throughout the whole thingamajig, throughout the whole assessment. I maintained good eye contact. Now, I did not make eye contact with the assessor at all, as far as I can remember. I used the masking technique of focusing on details around the face and eyes to make it, sort of mask the autism habitually, mask the autistic stuff, try and come across more like a neurotypical person, just for the sake of not being judged too harshly. It's like a habitual thing. I don't really know how to turn that off. And even if I did know how to turn it off, again, it would be dishonest, wouldn't it, for me to go in there and be like, yeah, I'm going to deliberately pretend like I'm struggling with something, just for your benefit, just for the sake of this horse dance that you want me to do for your money. That wouldn't be honest, I have to just go and be myself, and being myself, what I do when I'm struggling with eye contact with someone is look around the eyes, which I think is quite, a common thing for autistic people to do. But here's the thing, right? I actually think that I forgot to mention eye contact in the assessment completely, because I was doing my masking thing and trying to seem like I wasn't struggling with eye contact. I don't think I actually mentioned it at all. And then they've come back, all of their reasons for saying that I'm obviously not struggling, I obviously don't need the support that I say I do. They're saying that I maintained good eye contact with the assessor throughout the consultation. And I'm thinking, but I didn't mention eye contact. So why did you mention eye contact? Putting aside the fact that you've said that my eye contact was fine and it wasn't a problem, but why did you bring it up then? I didn't. To me it's like, well, okay, I know why you brought it up. It's because you're not actually reading what I've written. You're just copying and pasting stuff and thinking, well, stereotypically, autistic people all struggle with eye contact, don't they? I mean, the fact of the matter is, every autistic person doesn't have to have every single symptom. I mean, with anything in the DSM or ICD diagnostic manuals, these things aren't like all or nothing. It's not like you have to have every single symptom to get the diagnosis. You just have to have enough of the symptoms to meet the diagnostic criteria. So that they just pick one, like, well, in Rain Man, he seems to struggle with eye contact, and in any program on telly where there's an autistic person an autistic character played by a non-autistic actor, the non-autistic actor will act as if they're struggling with eye contact, because that's a way to communicate autism in a way that works on camera. It's not because every autistic person actually has that. So they just made this assumption about me based on this stereotype that I must struggle with eye contact, or I must be the kind of person who would tell them that I would struggle with eye contact, excuse me. So that seems really weird, and I'm trying to say to them, well, why are you bringing it up when I didn't bring it up? It's just, the same as I've been stereotyped based on the assumption that autistic people can't be articulate, and now I'm being stereotyped based on the assumption that autistic people must want to have a whinge about how hard eye contact is. Well, they happen to have been correct. I do happen to struggle with eye contact a bit sometimes, most of the time, but they didn't know that because I forgot to mention it. Stereotyping, not good, not good. So I've sent off my mandatory reconsideration notice. They've come back and said still, no, they're not giving me any PIP support at all, which is a shame because I really could have done with it. I mean, as I say, I'm on ESA at the moment, but what I want to do is get off benefits. I want to get off benefits completely. I want to really go hard on my web design business, start making some money from that. The trouble is with being on ESA, like ESA is all or nothing because it's not means tested. It's like the moment you start earning any money at all, they just take it away. Whereas with PIP, it is means tested. So, I mean, I might be wrong, but I think that means that you could be on PIP, and then when you start earning money, you just get less PIP to make up, until you get to the point where you don't need the PIP anymore. That would be the best way to do it, so you wouldn't feel like you were having to look over your shoulder all the time. With ESA, you kind of do feel like you're looking over your shoulder all the time. Like, I don't feel like I can even go for a little walk. You know, like I should go for a little walk when I can, because I'm not gonna just sit here and accept my fate and just be like, oh well, that's my life then. I'm just a chronic illness person, so I'll just sit here in my pajamas watching daytime TV. No, like if I've got the energy to go for a walk and I physically can, then I'm going to, because that's going to be beneficial to my health. But you feel like, well, like, you know, you could very well end up in the newspaper because one of your neighbours has taken a picture and said, well, why is he on this benefit if he's able to go and do this? Like, well, you know, the fact that I can go for a little light stroll every so often is not a transferable skill, is it? It doesn't mean that I can go and do a job. And, you know, I've needed so much support from my mum, even with going through this process, in writing up all of the things that I want to say to them, in getting to the appointment. You sort of think, like, is this a test in itself? Because, like, if I had the capacity to sit here and do all of this admin work, I would just get a part-time admin job in an office. It's roughly equivalent. It really feels like the amount of work you have to put in just to apply in for this and jumping through hoops for them. You honestly might as well go and get an admin job. And it's like, so you're damned if you do and damned if you don't. Because if you do apply and you do go through the whole process of appealing and stuff, then their attitude is, well, you're all right to do this. That's roughly equivalent to, you know, half a shift at an office. So, you know, why don't you just do that? And if you don't turn up, they're not going to go, ah, well, he didn't turn up, so that means that he must be too disabled, so he didn't turn up, so he does need the benefit money. No, they'll say, well, you didn't turn up, so screw you, mate, you're not getting any money. Completely damned if you do and damned if you don't. Anyway, I'm rambling now, can't remember where I got to. But it's, like I say, it's an absolute nightmare. I need to send off a thing now to try and appeal it to a tribunal and try and argue the case that they're actually not acting within the law. You know, for them to stereotype me and say that I shouldn't be articulate, like, is that legal? Like, for them to say that, you know, assuming about the eye contact and, you know, the lies as well, like saying that I've said that I can plan journeys, but I said the opposite of that. So it's like, you know, there's copied and pasted stuff that they've just forgotten to take out, and there's lies that they've just told deliberately. You think, how can you argue with that, you know? That's like, it's like trying to have a reasonable, rational debate with a child who thinks he's a helicopter, you know? When the argument is just, yeah, I'm a helicopter. Like, you can't reason with that. You have to just get to the point of like, alright mate, if you like, you're a helicopter, fine. So yeah, in conclusion, what an absolute ball ache and what an absolute set of bastards the DWP are. You know, repeatedly, safely, within a reasonable time, to a reasonable standard. You're supposed to be testing my capacity to do things repeatedly, safely, to an acceptable standard, in a reasonable time. Everything takes me twice as long as everyone else. Like, even when I make my lunch, it takes twice as long because I'm having to like fiddle around with smaller implements and stuff. I'm having to sort of take it easy so that I don't overdo it. So it's like it takes me an unreasonable amount of time to make my lunch, if I am even able to make myself some lunch that day. And it's not to a reasonable standard because half of it ends up on the floor. And I don't do it safely because I keep on accidentally cutting my finger when I'm trying to slice the bread. It's like I'm in so much pain I can't concentrate on what I'm doing. I keep slicing into my finger by accident. So that's not safe, is it? And like, you know, as I said, I can't even have lunch every day. So it's not repeatedly, is it? So they haven't measured my capacity to do these things safely, repeatedly, in a reasonable time and to a reasonable standard. And they haven't said that they haven't tested my ability to do it on the majority of days. They've even said in this letter that they are supposed to be testing my capacity to do things like on the majority of days. And it's, well, how? And as if I'm actually doing those tasks. Can you lift your arm up? Well, yeah, but then I'm not going to be able to do it later, so I'm not going to be able to have anything to eat. Yeah, we don't care about that. But I told them that I struggle with preparing food, and they've said that, you know, I can prepare food with an AIDA appliance, even though I've told them that there's no AIDA appliance that can actually help. And they've actually literally written in here, because I said, you know, part of the problem for me is, you know, like with preparing food, I can buy cheese that's already grated. I can, you know, when I'm able to buy my food myself rather than send my mum, I can buy grated cheese, I can buy chopped veg. I might not be able to open the packet, I might not be able to lift the pans, but, you know, I'll do what I can to make it easier on myself. Obviously, I need to eat. I said, you know, a lot of the problem is the actually getting the food. But they've said that, no, I don't have any problems with mobility and moving around. Well, I can't go and get the food, but, you know, very occasional that I'm able to actually drive to Morrison's and walk around the supermarket because of the pain and the lights and the overwhelming, the sensory overload business. And they've literally said in this letter that they do not consider having food to be an integral part of the process of preparing food. Which, you know, let that sink in, get your head around that. Having food isn't an essential part of preparing food. I think it might be. I think it actually might be. Yeah. You know, it's like if my legs fell off and they said, well, are you struggling to walk around? My answer would be, well, you know, I'm not struggling to walk around, I'm not trying to walk around because my legs have fallen off. And I know that I can't walk around if I haven't got legs. And then their answer would be, well, you know, we've got yes or no here, either you are struggling to walk around or you're not. So we'll put no, not struggling to walk around. Well, no, like, I haven't said that I'm not struggling, I haven't said I don't need support. It's just that how you've worded the question, are you struggling to walk around? Well, no, my legs have fallen off. You know, it's like saying to someone that hasn't got a car, like, do you struggle to drive? Well, I don't try to drive because I haven't got a car. Right, okay, no, don't struggle to drive, so no problems with your health then, it looks like. Well, that isn't what I said though, is it? Like, absolute madness, absolute madness. Anyway, the thing that really stings is the fact that, you know, like in here there's, you know, this is the product of people that work for the DWP. These letters that they've written to me is people who work for the DWP writing to me. And you think, well then, demonstrably, like I've got the evidence here, these workers are dishonest because they put things in here that they know aren't true. They've said things, you know, you said this. Well, they know that I didn't say that. They're lying on purpose. So demonstrably they're dishonest. The stereotyping based on ignorance. So demonstrably they are ignorant, too ignorant, you know, not intelligent enough. They don't understand enough about disabilities really to work in that job. Would you employ people like that who lie and who do, you know, it's incompetence as well because of the stuff in here that they've obviously copied and pasted from other people's reports and then forgot to pull out. So we've got incompetence, dishonesty and ignorance. I wouldn't employ people like that, and yet those people do get employed. And I know that if I was to try and get a job, it wouldn't happen. Even if I went through a period where it was like, you know, health-wise, I was feeling like, okay, I could go and work in an office somewhere. You know, I would need a lot of reasonable adjustments to the point that they might say it's unreasonable. You know, I would need to be facing away from the window, away from light bulbs. No good coming to talk to me if there's, you know, if you're standing in between my eye and a light bulb. I would have to be on the ground floor, couldn't be dealing with stairs all the time. I would have to be near a toilet. So even if I was to find an employer who was willing to make all of those reasonable adjustments, still, you know, to have somebody there that's, you know, their joints are going to partially dislocate, you know, unpredictably, could happen at any time, not worth the insurance, you know. If you could avoid employing that person, and I've had this happen to me, you know, people that will find it. I got offered a job ages ago and it was like a promotion from being a support worker to a senior support worker. And I turned up for the interview with a walking stick, and they said, well, you can't bring a walking stick in because it's dangerous, because these particular people with their health problems, you know, it'd be dangerous for you to have a stick. They might take it and hit you with it, basically. Okay. And you know, other jobs where they'll offer me the job and then they'll see me, and then because I was on a walking stick at the time, they'll find some excuse of like, oh, the job's been filled actually. Is it? Actually, you know, it turns out that this other candidate was the stronger candidate after all. Or, you know, a couple of times it's been telling me that I'm allowed to arrive late as part of the reasonable adjustments and understanding my health condition and the problems I'd have getting ready in the morning. So yeah, absolutely fine to arrive late, that's reasonable adjustments. They'll let me keep on doing that for a while and then pull me into the office and say, yeah, you haven't passed your probation period because of all of this arriving late. Well, you told me I was allowed to arrive late as reasonable adjustments. Have you got that in writing? Or no, because you didn't put it in writing. Well, so I've had that happen before, you know, they'll find an excuse. So yeah, like I say, the stinger is that it's like, it's so hard for me to try and get work and so easy for them to try and get work when they're incompetent and dishonest and ignorant about the things that they really should know about. That's, you know, bit of a brain exploder, and like I say, a bit of a stinger. That hurts a little bit, you know. I want to work and I can't, even though I am honest and even though I'm, you know, try to be competent in what I'm doing and try to know enough about what I'm doing. Yeah, anyway, but you know, maybe what I should put some mood music over this, like Britain's Got Talent when they do the sob stories. I should win because I've got the sob story. No, I'm not trying to do a sob story. This is therapeutic. I do feel better getting stuff off my chest, but as I said before, the point of this really is just for me to practice my speaking. I'm going to try and join a public speaking group soon if I can handle going, you know, I think it's every month. If I can commit to that and if I can handle it health-wise, mobility-wise, I'd like to do that. So that's all I'm doing really. I'm not trying to tug on your heartstrings. This is, you know, practice for my business videos, practice just to keep my speech fluid and not flubby, you know. Anyway, I'm rambling now. There, you hang up. No, you hang up. No, you. Go. No, you. Go on, you. All right. Bye.